Parliament. In a Gazette notice dated 26th October, the head of state appointed the 22 new cabinet secretaries, the Attorney General Justin Muturi and Secretary to the Cabinet Mercy Wanjau. The President, that is William Ruto, trusting that these ladies and gentlemen would help him propel the country. 100 days into their reign, much has been done, much is yet to be done. Just what do Kenyans feel about the performance of this cabinet? Well, with a vision of fully digitizing government services, taming insecurities, advancing services on the health sector or in the health sector, and much more, is the cabinet on course to help the president deliver on his manifesto? Welcome on board. That is what we'll be looking at this morning, alongside other activities that are playing out as pertaining to politics. It's good to have you on this beautiful morning. Also, we will delve deep into affordable housing, but most importantly, just getting to understand how best you can get it right when you're putting that investment on the question of land, generally housing. Karibu sana. It's good to have you. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV47KE. That is how you get to interact with us, and we'll be sampling some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast. So let's kickstart by first of all taking a look at the papers this morning. The Standard newspaper, the People Daily, as well as the Daily Nation, and then we're going to shift gears to that very important conversation. Once again, it's important that we get to hear from you. Just what do the papers speak of this morning? We start off with the Standard newspaper. And yes, once we have it on screen, we take a look at what the Standard newspaper speaks of. Lots of politics therein, also as to a sad moment for the people of Turkey and the global fraternity at large. And we're talking about 2,300 people who were dead in an earthquake, and that is captured on page 26. That is the world or the global page, where then of course one of the biggest earthquakes that has been experienced by Turkey, and sending very many people into the grave, and thousands more injured as a powerful quake hit southern Turkey, that is in Syria. And of course, in at least 1,498 people that have been declared dead. Of course, we're looking at an earthquake that really wasn't anticipated, but most importantly, speaking of how huge it is, and just how sometimes it becomes difficult for countries to brace themselves for such occurrences. And definitely a developing story. We'll be following up closely to get you the updates from that very end. And why is death toll so high? And will it be difficult to get aid, that is, to the right places? Those also are the questions that are being asked. Perhaps a majority are still captured in this, indeed, moments that are not so good for the people of Turkey, and as I have said, for the global fraternity. But we shift gears away from that and to what is happening right here in the country. Kenyan wins round one battle with Facebook, a story captured on page 10. That is as to a legal battle that has been ongoing, that is in the corridors of justice. And page 10, they say it's about former Facebook moderator who wins first round against Meta. Employment court dismissed Meta's argument that it cannot be sued in Kenya, and that employees at some source asked the court to lift NDAs that prevent them from testifying. We're talking about content moderators engaged through the first respondent that also reported insomnia, nightmares, memories of content. They moderated anxiety as well as depression. Just telling you how the online space, or generally the question of technology and the social media platforms, are quite delicate spaces, and therefore even in painting or in trying to just engage therein, you have to be careful what it is that you write and how it is that you manage your own to avoid such scenarios. Long wait for non-existent fertilizer, A story captured on page 8. Government has told Delight farmers to pay about 3,500 for a 50 kg bag of fertilizer, but almost 6 months later, the fertilizer is yet to reach them. This, as I have said, is a story captured on page 8. Just what could be informing the delay, even as this is anticipated, so that we get to see our farmers working in the shamba for purposes of helping the government achieve its dreams. First of all, of making it affordable for us to survive, also producing farm products that will be enough for the people of the country, and sometimes we even get a surplus that would be imported. This even as sugarcane farmers in Mumias are yet to get about 17 million payout, and we're talking about KCSAP. They, of course, definitely give you a quotation, and once you supply the fertilizer, then they give you a check that you can bank, which is more of a delay at this very point. And 80.5 billion shillings where Kenyans spend on fertilizer imports per year. This is according to the CS for Agriculture, Mithika Linturi. And on the next page, that is page 9, parents complain of high lunch levies, tuition fee. That is a story that is there even as we're having our students going back to school. The situation, leaders say, is locking out many learners who cannot afford to pay the compulsory charges. And Reverend Paul Maderi said even the church is under pressure to support the needy students. Is this the right way to go? Perhaps adjustments to be done so that students can be carrying lunch to school. Also, one conversation that is on, and we get to see how different then the stakeholders would approach to address this. How to deal with multiple pregnancies. This to the women. For mothers, multiple pregnancies can sound scary. It can be an overwhelming time for a new mother to discover that she is carrying not two but more babies. A story captured on page 12, and we know that story that we had the other day, sometime last week, where a mother gave birth to 5 babies somewhere in Nakuru, yes, but unfortunately they all could not survive. Away from it, tax wars escalate as members of parliament then order treasury for records. This is a story on page 4 and 5 of the Standard newspaper, page 4 and 5 of the Standard newspaper. And although tax exemptions as well as waivers are not illegal, the Kenya Kwanza government wants all records of the same from 2018, that is to 2022, tabled in parliament, while Azimio blasted Ruto for relying on incompetent people for advice. This, as I have said, is a story that is expounded on page 4 and 5 of the Standard newspaper. And speaking of just how best a majority of Kenyans have gotten waivers and how it is important for us to have this tax conversation. Remember, many have told the president to let it for the tax agency commission to focus on addressing some of these differences that we witnessed today. And so majority leader claims that some Jubilee leaders granted tax waivers to their families, and Ishungwa says that waivers were communicated to the Auditor General. It's a conversation that has been there right from the time the president got into power, putting the Bible down and taking the sword up and saying that, well, he will focus so much so on making sure that Kenyans, all for that matter, are paying tax so that the same then can be collected for purposes of servicing our very own debt, servicing the budget itself, as well as for purposes of us saving and generating more revenue for the country. What do you need to know on estate duty tax currently in the spotlight? This has been talked about for the longest of time and pertaining to the key presidents, that is President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, may his soul rest in his peace, as well as Jomo Kenyatta, may his soul rest in eternal peace. So details of this as captured on page 5, just so you are enlightened. The Grammy Awards, big wins for Beyonce, stems as Burna Boy misses out. And Nigerian singer Thames also made a major mark when she won her first Grammy. And on this other side, Burna Boy, who won Best Global Music Album in 2021, lost out to the enviable awards this year. And we also, most of the musicians going out there to celebrate this moment. As always, it was glam and lots of beautiful fashion as well, celebrations for those ones who carried the day. Away from the Grammys and back to the front page, Raila's movement signals end of Azimio. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has formed a caucus called the Movement for Defense of Democracy, which echoes in his well-known political trick. That is on the Standard newspaper still, in his political trick of dumping and forming new alliance after every election cycle. Will it gain currency like those before? A story captured on page 6. And I think we all saw the soldiers in this army of the Movement for Defense of Democracy out there in regalia. The red berets, as always, signify lots in relations to the battles for democracy, the battles for liberation. And so this story that has been captured on page 6 of the Standard newspaper brings to the fore the plans of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and just questions as to what then is his next plan, and whether this will overlook other parties that sit therein in Azimio One Kenya alliance. And so Raila allows youthful leadership of Movement for the Defense of Democracy to address rallies. And as well, ODM leadership say MDD is an affiliate of Azimio that will fight for the rights of Mwananchi. We'll be looking forward to see what are the plans and what is on. Away from it, the Daily Nation, the front page, Raila's own goal on IEBC. We will not allow Ruto and his sycophants to single-handedly appoint the independent electoral and boundaries commissioners. That is according to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. The former Prime Minister rallied his allies to support the IEBC Amendment Bill 2019, which gave the Parliamentary Service Commission many slots. Politicians who are coalescing around then Deputy President William Ruto opposed the move, saying it was giving both Kenyatta's Jubilee Party and Mr. Odinga's Orange Democratic Movement sweeping powers on the recruitment of commissioners, and the decision has returned to haunt Mr. Raila Odinga. Story captured on page 4 and 5, and therefore we'll be looking to see how best this will be tackled. From one pain, as schools defy state, and some principals have ignored the Ministry of Education guidelines, that is by turning schools into money minting businesses, exploiting the parents, if you'd want to call it that. And of course, we're talking about exorbitant prices of items such as uniforms, imposing extra levies and other hidden charges, as captured on page 2 and page 3 of the Daily Nation. Don't turn away learners who lack fees or uniform. This is according to the CS for Matters Education, Chogu. But then again, such appears not to be the same, and there's that pain, and especially for the parents, even as they take their students to school. That is, first of all, Form 1. And as we also await to get reports on what is going on for those ones that have joined junior secondary. The earthquake kills of over 2,300 in Turkey and Syria. That also, as I have said, is a developing story we'll be following up on. And success doctors give conjoined twins a new lease of life after delicate 15-hour surgery. That is a story captured on page 15. And we certainly hope that these children then would survive. That is on the Daily Nation, not page 6, sorry. It is page 6 of the Daily Nation as pertaining to this very, very historic moment. And KNH doctors in 15-hour operation to separate conjoined Bungoma twins, and twins are currently recovering at the referral hospital with doctors unclear on when they'll get to stabilize. We wish them nothing but the best, as well as their own mom and family. And as well, there's another story here that is expounded on the back page of the Daily Nation. Kenya's public debt crossed the 7.9 trillion mark for the first time. That is last December. The question of debt is one conversation that we've been having, and that weakening shilling has increased the pain from foreign debt, which is mainly denominated in the United States dollar. We're talking about 10 billion, and this even as lawmakers cap the borrowing to that level. Parliament last year set Kenya's debt ceiling at 10 million, and this cap is expected to be raised soon to enable the new administration cover, and of course its 2023-2024 budget deficit. That is a conversation that we're having, and we'll continue to have this conversation, perhaps to establish just how Kenya Kwanza government will be able to get the people of Kenya out of the question of debt. The People Daily briefly kills fees, pain. Oh, this is chaos as fees, pain, and of course from one's start school. A story captured on page 6 and 7. Front page of the People Daily, expounded on page 6 and 7. Kenya Kwanza targets handshake tax waivers. House Majority Leader Ishungwa asked Treasury to list of beneficiaries since 2018. As Right Honorable Raila Odinga criticizes planned law change. And away from it, top KNH doctors save conjoined twins after 15 hours in the theater. And workers farm to pay more for NSSF, perhaps a different story out of the ones that we have taken prior. And Court of Appeal paves way for Ruto government, that is to raise payments from 200 to 2,000 in push to ramp up savings for old age. Move will increase cost of business, cut incomes as well. That is a story captured on the front page of the People Daily, and definitely one that might not rub many well, but all the same, the conversation on taxes, on what Kenyans are supposed to pay as levy or pay as you earn and as you pay, and definitely this, oh yeah, it's definitely pay as you earn, and this is one that we'll be following up on to give you more updates. Let's now pick the stories. Police in Narok County have arrested about a 23-year-old man in a possession of 65 kilograms of cannabis sativa with a street value of 1.8 million shillings. Narok Central Sub-County Police Commander Frederick Shiundo says they received a tip-off from the public who informed them of a notorious bang dealer in Narok town. And according to police, the suspect, Simon Gedaiga, had packed the drugs in 1 kilogram packages ready to be transported to various parts of the country. The police say the drug is usually transported using motorbikes to areas around the town, and that at the time of the police arrival, there was a number of motorbikes waiting to be loaded with the illegal drug.
Kenya liko tu kwa hawa watu wa sigara peke yake, lakini hiyo hata ungefungua ionekane.
Right, lots of cases pertaining to drug, certainly, as we hope that this then becomes a game of the past, because our youth out here are equally struggling with this. That is not so good, and definitely it's been a battle that has been on, quite a tough one, but we hope that such would be addressed proper. Residents of Nyandarua County are living in fear following the dwindling water volumes of Lake Ol Bolosat, a critical site for hundreds of livelihoods, livestock and wildlife. 90% of the lake has so far dried up, leaving residents with only 10% of water coverage.
Down the hills of Aberdare Forest in the county of Nyandarua lies Lake Olbolosat, the only natural lake in the Mount Kenya region whose beauty and existence has been greatly destroyed as drought continues to strike hard. Nyandarua Member of Parliament Faith Gitau has expressed her disbelief on the state at which the lake is at. Only 10% of water coverage area is what is remaining, while the other 90% has totally dried up.
Saa hii hakuna tourist anaweza kuja hapa kwa sababu hakuna kitu ya kuona. Hapa tumekuwa na ndege za angani zinatokanga nchi mbali sana, lakini saa hii hakuna hata moja tunaweza ona hapa, zote zilitoroka.
The lawmaker added that if the lake is not rescued, land grabbers could take advantage of the neglected lake and grab the land for their own benefit.
Watu wa Nyandarua tunahofia hii maneno ikiendelea hivi, watu watakuja kuimba hili shamba na watanyakua na waanze kujenga hapa.
At the same time, locals have raised concerns over the illegal grazers who are moving around the lake with their livestock, saying they are a threat to the community within.
Kati tuliahidiwa huu mradi wa kutengeneza hii Lake Olbolosat, tunaomba serikali iingilie kati ili hii matope yote iliyoko iondolewe, ndio ziwa yetu iendelee kustawi. Ni huzuni kubwa, tuko na viboko wengi kwa hii lake, tuko na samaki wengi kwa hii ziwa, tuko na ndege wa kila aina tofauti tofauti, zaidi ya ndege 200 tofauti tofauti, na hawako wote wameangamia.
They have further called upon the government to ensure the lake is protected as it is a critical site for hundreds of livelihoods, livestock and wildlife. Andrin Kilemi, TV 47.
Well, farmers in the country have a reason to smile after the government launched a farmers registration platform that will store crucial information and has been touted as a game changer in the agricultural sector. The government was, however, not clear on how less tech-savvy farmers will use the platform. Collins Lusweti with that story.
Many farmers in the country have time and again found themselves uncertain on certain issues related to farming, such as which crop to plant, the start of planting season, how to get subsidized fertilizers, markets for their produce, and so on. This may soon change if the government's word is anything to go by. The Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Mithika Linturi, has today launched the Kenya Integrated Agriculture Management Information System, an integrated module-based digital platform solution that will support farmer registration and e-voucher subsidy program. The CS says the move is in line with the Government of Kenya digitization agenda.
Unless we have proper organized farmer system, probably whatever we want to do in terms of disseminating information, in terms of giving support to our farmers may be a big issue, and the reason to why, in line with our President's commitment to digitizing government service and in appreciation of what technology can be able to do.
The platform will ensure all information on farmers is well captured and stored to enhance easy service delivery from the two levels of government. Farmers will be able to document the type of farming, number of livestock, number of acreages, and other crucial information.
We want to know which farmer, where this farmer is, the acreage, whether it includes coffee, tea, pyrethrum, maize, seed, how many number of cows or sheep that he or she has. This is the kind of information that we want.
The platform has been facilitated by the Sweden government through a $52 million grant, with the Food and Agriculture Organization expected to ensure its implementation to the fullest.
Sweden has been supporting Kenyan agriculture since independence. So that is now close to 60 years. And we continue to support Kenyan agriculture.
We as the FAO will be implementing, providing all the support, all the technical assistance, all the capacity building that is really needed.
However, there are concerns that some farmers in the country may find it difficult to use the technology due to challenges with using technology and not having devices that support the technology.
Tutaitisha maoni kwa watu na uanze kufikiria vile pia unaweza kujibu hiyo swali. Kama ukituletea sisi tukubaliane tuone hiyo iko sawa, tutaweza kuhakikisha, because wale watu wako na smartphone ni rahisi. Pia unajua kufikia kuna area ambayo internet pia iko na upungufu kidogo, sababu these are some of the challenges that probably we be able to encounter.
Some of the farmers we spoke to say they are already having trouble with the digital subsidy fertilizer program.
Wanajua inaitwa nini? System sasa mbolea iko ndio. Na kama bado pewa mitajua namna gani.
Collins Lusweti, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, senators are planning to visit multiple counties in the country to resolve conflicts between governors and members of county assemblies, which they believe is jeopardizing devolution. The chair of the Senate Devolution Committee, Mr. Sheikh Mohammed Abbas, announced this at a meeting in a Naivasha hotel with the Council of Governors, the County Assemblies Forum, CAF, and the PS in charge of devolution. Our reporter William Dennis Jiru with that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Walter Zomondi.
The Senate Committee on Governance and Accountability is sounding the alarm about a massive outstanding bill that dates back to more than 5 years. Despite a decade having passed, the Senate has failed to conduct adequate audits of devolution in counties, with the worst affected areas being water, health and agriculture.
There are many people who have lost money through the bending bills. Some of them cannot be accounted for. So we want to verify all those things. We want to call the governors to at least tell us what is the position of the bending bills, because billions of money, shillings are missing. And one is actually those people who invested their own money in projects of for the counties and did the work have not been paid for the last 5 years. And it is in tune of millions. If you look at it, like only in Nairobi, it's 100 billion.
Additionally, conflicts over county boundaries, misunderstandings, and headquarters location have significantly hindered service delivery to the people, resulting in further challenges.
In Tharaka Nithi, where there was a conflict, there was a bit of misunderstanding on where to relocate the county headquarters. The national government on one side, staying on the old place where they moved from, that is Shagoria, and the county has moved to another town.
The team warned that with a multitude of challenges, including late disbursements of funds to the counties, devolution is at risk of collapsing if the issues are not addressed soon.
The issue of the fiscal situation of the country is public knowledge. And I think we need to move that level where governments both at national and county levels start being responsible in order for the economic activity that we need to happen in the country.
Furthermore, the team plans to audit law governing the implementation of the Urban and Cities Act and will hold meetings with the cities that face unique challenges. They believe that the solving issues by creating institutions like Nairobi Metropolitan Service is not practical.
Nairobi, for instance, had the NMS situation that we want to relook at the laws that moves a city to a national government. We need to actually re-audit that law. We will plan to meet with the various cities to find out how they're moving and how they're implementing that law. We also need to, as we meet other counties, we will be holding them to account on how well they're implementing the issues of urban areas and cities, how they are determining which are the urban areas, how they are doing the spatial planning, how they are mapping the infrastructure that are relevant to ensure that these urban areas grow.
Reporting for TV47 from Naivasha in Nakuru County, I'm Willie Dennis Njiru.
Now, 3 people involved in the Saturday accident in Turkana County have died while receiving treatment at the Lodwar Referral Hospital, bringing the number of people who died to 17. Families that lost their loved ones in the accident that happened on the Lodwar-Kakuma Road turned up at the Lodwar mortuary to help with the identification. Some of them say the tragedy has greatly affected Turkana County, as some families have lost up to 4 people. The community is now asking the county government to come to help them in transporting their loved ones to their final resting place.
Imeja. Sasa iko poa. Hizi tumelala hapa usiku kwa hospitali. Sasa mimi nimelala.
The director of Makteb Contractors Limited, has been arrested by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission (EACC) Bungoma branch over allegations of irregularities in the procurement and award of a contract worth 600 million shillings for the construction of the Malaba Water and Sanitation Project. The accused is set to appear in court today, and this arrest follows the release on bond of 1 million shillings each of the 6 individuals who were arrested on February 1st for their involvement in the same scheme.
According to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the investigation into the matter arose after allegations that the Rift Valley Water Services Board had awarded the tender for the construction project to a company that didn't meet the necessary qualifications came to light. Joram Opala Otieno, the director of Makteba Contractors Limited, has been arrested today, and he is being held at EACC Bungoma Regional Office for processing.
Today we did arrest one suspect by the name Joram Opala Otieno, who is the director of Maktaba Contractors Limited, on allegation of irregular procurement in the award of tender and contract for construction of Malaba water and sanitation project for a tender sum of 600 million.
EACC branch in charge Christine Andome says that the suspect will be arraigned before Bungoma Anti-Corruption Court tomorrow to be charged alongside 6 others who appealed on February 2nd this year over the same accusations.
Is amongst the six suspects, which were last week on 2nd arraigned in court and faced various offenses relating to violation of procurement procedures and laws.
The 6 individuals were arrested on 1st of February and later released on bond after facing the Bungoma Anti-Corruption Court on 2nd of February.
Each accused person shall be free on their own bond of Kenya shillings 1 million with 2 sureties of similar amounts.
They were accused of willful failure to comply with the law and regulations relating to procurement, neglect of official duty by a public officer, and fraudulent practice in procurement process. The case is said to be mentioned on 15th of February this year. Wanji Sostin, TV47, Bungoma.
Now, different leaders from across the political divide in the country continue to send their condolences to the late former Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor George Magoha's family. Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi arrived at Magoha's home in Lavington, where he also condoled with his family, saying the death of the professor is seen as a huge loss and blow to the education sector. The late Magoha is expected to be buried on Saturday, February the 11th, at his home in Omira, Siaya County.
kuja kuombeleza, kuambia mjane pole kwa yale ambayo yamefanyika, na pia kusema kwamba yote tuweke kwa uwezo wa Mwenyezi Mungu. He was a colossus, he was a giant in the academic space, and he took up his role with a lot of gusto. He was very resolute if he believed that what he was pursuing was right. He would pursue it with a lot of passion. And we can only say that we pray that God gives us more individuals, men and women, who can pursue education matters for our country with the same kind of energy that Professor Magoha did. Lakini sasa Mwenyezi Mungu naye ana mpango yake. Kwa hivyo tunasema pole.
Now, a pair of conjoined twins have successfully been separated after a 15-hour complex surgery conducted by a team of 24 surgeons at Kenyatta National Hospital. 4 months male infants from Bungoma County who were joined the chest and abdomen at birth began a new life apart on Sunday midday after being in the theatre previous night. And Zainab Mohammed with that.
They grow, they're healthy.
A team of 24 surgeons began a complex surgery on 4-month-old male infants on Saturday night at 10 p.m. The infants had a rare condition in which they shared a liver, chest bones, upper intestine, muscles and 2 hearts that were in one cavity, making the surgery challenging for the surgical team.
We took the first 1 hour after anesthesia induction to raise up our skin flaps and make sure they were nice and safe to be used. Apparently, when we started off, at the end of that 1 hour, we got another cardiac arrest. So we had to deal with the cardiac arrest first. And good enough, because we were in a good setup, thanks to the hospital and the government for setting up that, we were able to stabilize the child.
The first separation was done around the abdomen, and the first part of the separation focused on dividing the liver in the abdomen to ensure that each of the infants had enough of it to function normally.
So for us to achieve this, to divide the liver, is very advanced surgery indeed. We have the equipment now that we can use to do that. And from the imaging that we had done in the X-ray department, we knew what to expect as we divided the liver and at what point where to cut on the liver so that each child can have a satisfactory liver. So for the next 3.5 hours, with good expertise that we have and the skills we have acquired, we were able to successfully divide the liver. That is coming up to 3 o'clock in the night.
Next, the doctors moved to the chest to separate the chest bones, muscles and skin shared by the infants before swiftly moving to the hearts that were in one cavity.
Delicately and with precision, we had to get through the membranes and separate the hearts so that each child could have his own heart independent. We were able to achieve that at 7 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning that is. And once we had achieved that, then the next thing was to separate the skin, each to have his own skin and the flap. So once that was completed, by 8 o'clock we had each child on a different table. So for the first time at 8 o'clock, they were no longer attached together. One child was on a different table, the other child was on a different table.
The target time for a safe separation for the twins was set at 6 months. However, complications with the twins' health necessitated the urgent separation. The twins are currently in the intensive care unit, and the next steps in the recovery process for them will likely involve close monitoring and management of their physical and medical needs as they heal from the surgery. The doctors will be working to ensure that they make a full recovery and that there are no complications from the procedure. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
Now, more than 1,500 people have died and 1,000 more injured after an earthquake erupted in Turkey and Syria while they were asleep. The story was produced by Norbert Odwar.
Rescue operations are still ongoing in Turkey and northwest Syria, where a massive earthquake struck, killing more than 1,500 people and injuring hundreds more. A According to reports, the disaster has destroyed apartment buildings and added to the wreckage already destroyed by years of war in Syrian cities. The earthquake, which happened this morning, is one of the most powerful to happen in the area more than 100 years. According to the Geological Survey of the United States, the earthquake hit 23 kilometers in several areas in Gaziantep region in Turkey at a depth of 24 kilometers. The reports further say that the initial magnitude 7.8 tremors in southeastern Turkey earlier was followed by magnitude 7.6 earthquake hours later amid several aftershocks before the third magnitude of 6.0 tremors. International offers to help Turkey and Syria with rescue efforts poured in after Turkey requested for help from the international community in rescue activities. Leaders from all parts of the world have sent their condolences to the two countries that have been affected by the disaster. USA, Qatar and India are among the 45 countries which have so far offered assistance to Turkey. They are sending search and rescue teams as well as medical teams along with relief material to the West Asian nation.
The Kenya Kwanza administration now wants the National Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u to grant them information on the list of individuals and firms who have benefited from tax waivers. In their request through the Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, Kenya Kwanza narrowed their focus to since January 2018 to date, pointing out that some key state officials from the previous administration manipulated the law to grant tax waivers to their families. Micah Gungu with the details.
As normal operations among lawmakers are expected to resume next Tuesday, the Kenya Kwanza administration now seeks a complete overview of those who received tax waivers in the past 5 years. In a statement to journalists Monday afternoon in Nairobi, Ichung'wah emphasized that everyone in the country is obligated to pay taxes and that no one should use their public office to grant themselves or their companies tax waivers.
Those who enacted the finance bill of 2022 and the years before, imposing what they are referred to as high taxes to Kenyans, are the ones now who are accusing others of imposing high taxes to Kenyans. Therefore, I want to confirm to you and to the country that there has been no any tax-related bill processed neither by this administration, the William Ruto administration, nor the 13th Parliament.
In his request, Ichung'wah narrowed his focus to the period from January 2018 to present, noting that some key officials from the previous administration manipulated the law to grant tax waivers to their families.
Kenyans again are aware there are those who used their offices as public officers in this country to grant themselves and their families and their cronies tax waivers. I have today written to the Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, requesting for information on all tax reliefs, exemptions and waivers that were granted from January 2018 to date.
This request comes a day after Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga emphasized that inheritance passed down through generations is legally exempt from taxation. He urged President William Ruto to avoid getting involved in tax politics and let the Kenya Revenue Authority do its job.
1982, bunge ilipitisha sheria ya kutoa hiyo sheria yote ya kuweka Wakenya wote wawe exempt. Pale tuko sasa, kila Mkenya sio rais peke yao, lakini Wakenya wote wamekuwa exempt. Kama wewe baba yako anafariki, anawaachia wewe mali, wewe ulipe ushuru. Unaona vizuri? Kwa hivyo hiyo sheria ambayo Ruto na Gachagua hawajui. Hiyo sheria ilitolewa 1982.
Hiyo shida hamutatatua mukitafuta mali ya Jomo Kenyatta. Mukitafuta nini? Mali ya Jomo Kenyatta. That one we will not allow.
The end game is to end impunity and make sure that everybody becomes a taxpayer like the rest of us. As to whether it is targeting anybody, we have no reason to target anybody. But we have every reason to target anybody who may have abused their office, granted themselves waivers, and not to target them for anything else, but to target them and politely request them to pay up their taxes that are due. Once you pay up your taxes, nobody else is interested in you. Even you and myself, we pay our taxes.
Ishongwa claimed that previous regime violated Article 210 of the Constitution to protect their families and friends from paying the taxman his dues.
3 says that no law may exclude or authorize the exclusion of a state officer from payment of tax by reason of A, the office held by that state officer, or B, the nature of the work of the state officer.
Some of the most important debates expected to run from next week include consideration of the budget policy statement for the year 2022 and debt management strategy for the year 2023. Mike Kagwongo, TV 47, Nairobi.
And the students who took the KCPE national examination in 2022 have started their first day of secondary school. That was Monday. However, parents have expressed concern about the high cost of living, which has made it difficult for them to support their children's needs. Chichi Josephine with more.
Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu, while addressing journalists during the registration inspection in Nairobi, explained that approximately 1.2 million students who sat for the KCPE 2022 exam will join secondary schools.
The number that has been able to transition from primary to secondary school is 1,268,000 because we are talking of 100% transition. And we are asking the parents that no child should be able to remain at home, that he or she has not been able to get admission in one of our secondary schools because we have now vacancies.
In addition, Machogu has pointed out that the government has sent a total of 16 billion shillings capitation funds to all the 10,000 public secondary schools in the country.
Government sends capitation money, and I'm happy to announce that last week we dispatched a total of 16 billion Kenya shillings, which went to all our public secondary schools, right from national schools, extra county schools, county schools, and sub-county schools, totaling a number of about 10,000 secondary schools countrywide.
In Bungoma County, Bungoma Boys Secondary School has received students who came to register. The deputy head teacher mentioned that the registration process will be done until the 13th of this month, as ordered by the Ministry of Education.
So far, we have admitted about 250, and we are expecting that by the end of the day, we should have about 350 to 400.
Tumetoka Meru. Kijana ameingia leo form 1. Now the process has been very smooth. It has not taken a long time. Tulifika 9. Na saizi by 1 we are through.
In Kisumu County, activities to register the first form students in Kisumu Day Boys High School were in full swing. According to the school deputy principal, the school has placed proper procedures to ensure that there is no congestion during the registration.
My target is 200, and as we speak, I'm at 160 now.
Admission is running smoothly. I've not experienced any challenge.
Elsewhere in Kakamega County, political leaders in Kakamega County have asked the Ministry of Education to put in proper procedures to ensure a successful transition.
Lengo letu leo ni kuhakikisha kwamba tuna achieve 100% transition kufuatana na mipangilio ya serikali.
Speaking at Matungo during a bursary check issuance exercise to approximately 2,000 students from disadvantaged families, Kakamega County Member of Parliament Elsie Muhanda and Peter Oscar Nabulindo explained that the challenges of the CBC systems are many, asking the ministry to intervene and solve them.
Wale walimu wenye wamechaguliwa juzi
wale wa junior secondary wafanyiwe induction haraka iwezekanavyo, wakuje waangalie hawa watoto.
Elsewhere, the fate of one student from Burinda Primary School in Butula constituency to join the Kapsabet National School is in limbo. Christopher Obuya, who scored 398 marks and emerged as the best student in Burinda Primary School, is afraid of missing a place in the school due to poverty.
Nilifanya darasa la 4 na nilipata alama 398 kwa Kapsabet Boys High School, lakini nyumbani hakuna uwezo wa kunipeleka shule.
Niliita Kapsabet Boys, lakini sina uwezo wa kumfikisha hapo. Naomba wahisani kama wanaweza nisaidia ili aweze kwenda Kapsabet Boys, kwa sababu hiyo tu ndio ndoto yake. Alianza kulilia kuanzia kitambo kwamba anachagua hii aende Kapsabet Boys, na wakati shule zilikuja walikuwa anachagua shule hiyo ndio ilikuja kwanza.
And finally, in Makueni County, the average number of students joining the Form 1 was witnessed while the parents who accompanied their children congratulated the school management for receiving them despite the difficult conditions of life.
Tumekuja hapa na mwalimu amekuwa mwema kwetu, amekuwa kutupokolea na mikono miwili, kwa hivyo tunashukuru sana.
Chichi Josephine, TV47.
And in studio, Wakili Nordin Kagai joins us this morning. We also have governance and policy analyst Abdullahi Alas. And lastly, we have political analyst Evans Wafula as we get to these very important conversations away from Mata schools, which I know we have talked about for the longest of time. Last time we were here with Alas. I don't know why I keep calling you Abbas instead of Alas. This should be the second time I'm doing that. We extensively looked at the question of education and what needs to be done, in relation to what has played out in other countries. And we still are in agreement that there's a lot to be done for us to get on course. But even still, we keep the ball rolling. And so as we witness our students go back to school, it's our hope that then we are able to manage. But it's going to be quite a stretch for our students, we must acknowledge, gentlemen. First of all, because of the break of COVID-19. Then after the break of COVID-19, the competency-based curriculum that has made lots of adjustments for some other students. It appears like it would be a cool 4 years lost for some of them. Those ones that are joining junior secondary school will tell you that they joined sometime last week but one. But up until date, as the teachers or as the institutions would complain, teachers have not been sent to them just yet. And so the students are there trying to figure out what next. Wafula, perhaps to start with you.
I think the disruption that we experienced during COVID in the education sector was a big lesson and a challenge, of course. And I hope that as the transition takes place in the sector, students will fall back to where they're supposed to be in terms of both the curriculum and also both the school calendar. But what I've been witnessing for the last couple of weeks, I think there's quite a total mess in our education sector. Look at the way kids are being admitted. We appear like a country that is emerging from a conflict or from a war. I mean, everywhere you see how students are being admitted in school is like we've never prepared ourselves. I think the big question here should be not only the issue of that transition from the CBC transition, but it's the quality of education and the number of teachers that are supposed to be deployed into these schools. And also the affordability. I mean, I've seen parents really decrying the fact that education has become very expensive. Some students even going back to school and then being sent back home. These are very issues that we really need to look into. I remember during Kibaki's time, the question, the whole debate about free education should actually be explained to people to understand. Because one day I was mentioned that a country like Somalia, for example, when they had free education, Kenya had not even realized free education. So I think we need to address this question of what really entails free education. And then parents really need to be cushioned, especially this time of economic difficulties that we are experiencing. Because any nation that wants to prosper or to develop must actually put a lot of emphasis on education. It's really absurd to see what is happening in the sector now that, I've seen very bright students not being able to go to school.
Yeah.
What is the government doing in terms of cushioning this or assisting these families where they cannot be able to send their kids to school?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, yesterday you speak of that, and it reminds me that yesterday there was a whole page, the front page, there was a whole list of students that, passed pretty well, but are struggling to get themselves to high school. A clear indication that there's a big problem. I'm a journalist, yes, but sometimes, every time I speak about this question of free education, it surprises me whether we have free education at all. Nordin.
Well, first and foremost, I believe we don't have free education, as you say. Maybe we can say subsidized education, because parents are always found to pay a little here, a little there. And that's why you see most children are unable to go back to school, because you see some parents don't have the means to actually take them to school. But that is sad, because I believe we should have built from where Kibaki left, because we should have worked on how we make our education free from the lowest level up to the university. I remember during the campaigns, Azimio was saying how their plan was to actually try and have free education across board. Now, the government can actually try and plan and implement that, because it might be the idea, but if it helps the Kenyans, we can do it. And then we move away from this issue of MPs always telling us about how they need CDF, because CDF is all about bursaries. And then you find there are those who get this bursary, there are those who don't get. But as Wafula rightfully says, we have a crisis in our education sector, because there's a lot of issues that are happening, and this might actually end up making our education system look very weak, which is not good, because out there, for those who try to get education post-Kenya abroad, they might find their certificates or degrees mean nothing out there, and courtesy of how you handle this transition and how we handle our education sector. Because if you look at the ministry, there's a lot of miscommunication, and that is why it looks like, it reminds me of a song by P Unit. It's called Una. That one, Una Jump, Una Ruka. Because it's more or less, there's a lot of, there's no clarity. They say one thing today, like you remember the morning preps and night preps, you have to come back and say, let me clarify, I'm talking about ABCD. So you find it's more or less like, it's acrobatic. Today we jump this side, tomorrow that side. So we need a clear directional policy on how we work on our education, because those of us who have actually gotten a point and favor to actually go to university by now, we are lucky. What happens to those who come after us? And we have messed up our systems that we don't even understand what is the next step for a child. So that actually hinders their growth, and it might actually, like I said, ruin the status of our education.
Yeah. And a new phase of it, perhaps we have seen the likes of Bailey Kipsang being, retained therein. Perhaps they understand so well what the plan of CBC is, and just how they intend for the country to fully and finally execute it. We are at a phase where we're also mourning the former CS, for Matters Education. And some have argued that, please let us be genuine for a moment and not pretend to have liked him to that level because of the level of castigation that he's received as to the question of education. Just where does it take us, looking at where we stand about alas? And I know we've talked about this, but we continue talking about it, especially at this point when we're having students going back to joining Form 1. We're laughing about the fact that there are others that are in class 6, or call it junior secondary, and in the same school there are those ones that are in class 8, and the confusion is real.
Well, I think first of all, I was just thinking about this when I was coming here. Kenya's education culture and philosophy is based on monetary, because every policy these guys come with has an end game of money. So the guys who develop the CBC curriculum, the guys who are doing this transition, it's good a country to reflect 60 years of the independence. It is okay for us to say, wait a minute, we are taking graduates to schools, but for me, I look at Kenyan education as a market for international cooperation and Western world. We are very good in report writing, proposals, and those things. But do we even produce toothpicks, or even farm inputs? So, the education sector, I don't know why even they removed art and craft or home science, because I did home science and art and craft. And as old as I am, it helped me know the basics of even how to clean, how to wash, how to cook. There are things that are very practical. The world is going into, hand-on skills, not just, writing reports or this. So I think the whole philosophy and the culture of Kenyan education system need to be looked at in a way that is very transitional. This confusion right now you're seeing is because of the transition from one system to another system, which is okay in any transition.
Okay.
It will come to pass because by next year, class 8, those other guys will go, these guys will resume, will go to secondary school. It is because of the age gap. Remember, there was a lot of outcry taking young boys and girls to secondary school when we have age gap in those secondary schools. So let's have them here, and I'm sure it was after President William Ruto came and then there was proposed that let them stay here. And there were a lot of logistical preparations. They needed classes, they needed teachers, they need desks, they need equipment. Like if they are laboratories, even if they're junior, they will be doing science. So I think what needs to be done is, what is wrong with our education is what is wrong with our society as a country. Everything of us is either rushed or looked into monetary. Every policy we come with, policies are developed for short term and long term. Education is what makes a country very distinctive.
Yeah.
My senior was talking about Somalia. Somalia, at that time, within, I think, from 1974, 75, around there, they sent even high school students to go and teach the Somali language in the villages so that the literacy level can go up. Now, why can't we use our Form 4s to go to Nyanza, to go to Mandera during the holiday, pay them some snippet, and then they teach basics so that our society becomes a society that is literate, meaning they can write, they can read. My mom speaks basic English courtesy of her children going to school.
Wow.
But she did not go to school. She knows what sugar is, she knows what milk is, she knows this and that. So education does not necessarily mean Form 1 up to Form 4. It means the society. We need to have adult literacy for our parents. Just because they did not have the opportunity to go to school when they were young, it doesn't mean they can learn now. So when you're talking of literacy now, you're talking about the guys who are in their 70s and 60s. Can they read? Can they write? Can they go to bank and sign a check? You know, there are things that a society must have. And I like comparing Kenya vis-a-vis Finland and Japan, one of the top countries in the world. Japan is, I don't think Japan, they keep livestock or goats or camel. They don't. They have technology advancement of skills. Look at Finland, a country that's today led by people who are younger than 35. In this country, we are led by people like Mudawori or Atuoli or 70s and 80s. So it is not that it's bad. It should be a way that young men and women are prepared in an education system where they can be leaders in their 35 and 40. As a Muslim, we are told the most mature age of a man is 40. When a man reaches 40 is when he's very wise now. 70 and 80 you're experienced, but the energy you have at 40 is when you need to tap. That's why if you look at Ruto right now, most of the leaders he has picked in parliament or in the assemblies are guys in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at it critically, it's a way of building the next generation for leadership. Ichungwa today is not, basically 40. If you look at Mutula Kilonzo, who is a junior, who is now a governor, is barely in his mid-40s. So societies are developed for generations, so that when this generation is picking up, others are also coming up. Education system are now prepare us for the challenges and the development and the advancement and innovation of this world. So I think my friend was saying, how are some people cabinet secretaries in this country? It is the right of every Kenyan to serve us, whether you think he's incompetent or not. No, we have all gone to universities. Our demeanor is different. Our character is different. God created us differently. What is important, do we create a very honest society, a society that is very decent in its dealings with everyone. We have Muslims, we have Christians. Majority of this country, I told you, 83% are Christians. Now, how do we treat each other? There are those who don't believe in God, and they live in this country. You remember there's a guy who was killed because, now, are you the one who created him? Why do you kill him? Because he's either... God is going to deal with him. It's between him and God, whatever he does. So societies must respect each other, but have norms that are very decent. Kenya as a society is a very, very indisciplined society. If you look at it, our utterances, look at the political class, look at what's happening in our laws. We make laws to target others.
Yeah.
Like the security bill that was coming up, Judge Odinga threw almost 8 clauses. It was a target of individual things because of, certain interest. The country cannot develop like that. It is a country of 50 million. So I normally call citizenry is a group of strangers who have accepted to live with each other in a country. Because my senior Wafula, does he know all Kenyans? No, but he met me today, I met him today. We are going to exchange contact. We will have deals together. We will have talks together. We will exchange, So as a country, that is how countries develop. His children and my children are maybe going to work together in offices tomorrow. That's how a country develops. Not you are a Muslim, you are a Christian, you are Azimio, you are Kenya. No. A country needs to have a very stable, solid systems that will work for everyone.
And proven over time, education has been quite a unifying factor that cannot be overlooked. Gentlemen, allow us to take a short break on that point of education, and we come back with more after this.
Usiyakubalie maumivu ya misuli kukatiza ratiba yako. Kaluma Pain Balm ni dawa ya kusugua iliyotengenezwa kutoka kwa miche maalum ili kutuliza maumivu ya misuli. Kaluma Pain Balm. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
On the next episode of The Realtor.
Real estate industry in Kenya has been perceived to be dominated by men. But you know what? This narrative is changing by having women who have involved themselves directly and they have become developers or even in other sectors within the sector. We are starting by celebrating Lynette of Homes by Sun.
We are changing the narrative.
Sure.
We are no longer the women wenye wako walikuwa wanajulikana kitambo. We are doing things here. We are changing our economy out here. I mean, nowadays we don't rely on Itumie Fair.
This Tuesday at 8:30 p.m.
Sona moja imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli ili kupambana na maumivu kwa haraka. Sona moja ina aspirin kama kiungo. Sona moja, kitulizo kamili. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
Kilimo Diaries is not your one-stop show. We are always on the move to different farms, and it's always unpredictable with animals, crops, and advice from both farmers and experts. We are always here to inform you on everything agriculture every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on your home of Untold Stories.
Kaluma King Herbal Lozenges zinazo nguvu maradufu kutuliza kikohozi, vidonda vya koo na mafua. Kaluma King ni shwari.
Tika mama huyo muharifu kaiba kuku zangu, vifaranga wangu na mayai zote pia kabeba. Aya, tika mama huyo.
Maumivu yakizidi, muone daktari.
In studio, Noreen Kagai, Abdullahi Alas, as well as Evans Wafula for this very important conversation. Let's get to it now that you have mentioned it, Alas. Raila movement signals end of Azimio. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has formed a caucus called Movement for Defense of Democracy, which echoes his well-known political trick of dumping and forming new alliances after every election cycle. Will it gain currency like those before it? And is it the right honorable Raila Odinga or the youth themselves that have just decided that, well, since we are under Azimio, but therein, let's have some movement that speaks to the matters of the youth? and the chances of us having space on the table that is in future, because they're always reminded that the youth are the future instead of are they today.
I don't know when the future will come.
And yes, we keep asking ourselves, just when will we get to that moment of the future? But is this something to be appreciated and celebrated, especially now that we're looking at a movement that has the face of the youth? And many have castigated Baba for always wanting to dominate, as opposed to transferring this, nurturing someone. Will there be someone who culminates out of this, even before we get to establish why we have this movement?
I think people are reading a lot into these kinds of political formations. I think pre-independence, we know how the likes of Tomboya, the labor movements that were led by young people, even looking post-independence, South Africa, where we are emerging of Julius Malema and the Economic Freedom Party. These are young people, relatively very young. Look at Uganda, the likes of Bobi Wine. Young people coming up into kind of not rebellious, but more of energetic and reorganized energy for them to be able to reclaim their place in of course, in the current political landscape. So what I'm seeing happening now is not like, and I think it was very absurd to see the security minister giving warning to this kind of a group that is not, they have not shown any evidence or only a solid threat to the national security. I think he's fighting with bandits who we all know they're armed, they're dangerous, and that's where the focus should be. These are political formations where I think Azimio and ODM by extension, or Azimio by extension, have looked into it that the place of the youth in their political formation was lacking. And I think the more open it becomes, the more good for themselves. Remember the times of the student radicalism and student movements in the universities. SONU, KUSA. These are relatively huge student movements that were led by young people, but had a serious position in our politics. And that has been lacking, I think, from the time we had the post-Moi regime. And now we are seeing, and you'll find most of these people who are there, some of them might be even student leaders and coming from different university formations, but coming out to operate as having a political platform, which they lacked.
Actually, many of them are students. I think I spoke to one of the conveners, the organizers, that is Anthony Manyara, who's been SONU president for the longest time.
And just
and I mean, generally, the KUSO is called,
And just remember at the times of NYS, where students, university students would go to NYS, get paramilitary training and also some level of discipline.
This is happening across...
And come back to the university. And then you could see how they could organize. So I think there should be no panic. This is just, it's not a militant wing of Azimio, as the way people would want to perceive it. But these are students who are people or young people who want to acclaim. Remember, Ruto sailed on the platform of the youth. And the hustler itself, in whatever context you want to look at it, it is a youth movement. I think he was able to get into the youth and try to use that narrative. So I think Azimio is just doing exactly what UDA did, but now they are doing it with a different formation, where we are now seeing a bit more organized. And let's see how it transforms itself to be a proper political, because they will also want positions inside Azimio. They're not just coming to castigate and to look at to stand on the way of the government, but also within Azimio itself, they will really want to get positions and to have a position in the entire Azimio formation.
And I will come to that and perhaps get to understand and establish whether this is going to yield any positive fruits, because then we look at experience and we look at such formations over time. But Nordin, very important thing, youth. Just how youth are these, gentlemen and ladies. I have not seen any lady. Oh, they are ladies, actually. They are ladies, I think. I think I spoke to one of them who was part of it, the Red Beret moment, and, coming at a time when we saw just how, disappointing the youth numbers were in terms of registration of, during the election time, and even the turning up in terms of, voter apathy. Really, youth do not seem to be interested in the question of politics today in comparison to what was there, in 2017 and the previous years. Is this a way of us getting into that moment of conversation and perhaps something that would change the face of politics, especially when it comes to the question of youth in the years to come?
First and foremost, I remember I sat here with you last year.
Yeah.
And I told you the first rally Raila was going to have, Raila is going to rebrand. And his rebranding started the day he went to Bunge la Mwananchi here in Nairobi. He sat there, and if you see some of the people who are wearing those berets were with him as he sat with Babu Owino and Jalango. Now, Babu Owino happens apparently, from the grapevine, happens to be the patron of this movement. These are, because some are personally known to me, these are student leaders, most of them. And you see, they see someone like Babu, who was a student leader and had ambitions of becoming member of parliament. Most of these young men there, or ladies, want to be members of parliament, senators, or governors. So the easiest way, because if you look at history, most of those, the likes of Jimmy Orengo, who came before, they came through student leadership. And the bill that was passed in parliament by the former majority leader, that was Duale, it kind of killed student leadership in the country. All right? It more or less, and that is why you see things like Sonu disappeared. And that was why that voice of the students was never, it's not the same, all right? Because these days, the voting is not as per students, more or less like delegates. So they have an issue with that. And Raila looks at them and sees that Azimio needs some new push or some new drive, or rather a new force. And that is why he's incorporated them into Azimio. Now, when you see the Minister for Interior say that they'll be dealt with and what have you, believe you me, these people wearing those berets would want to be arrested because it actually elevates you now.
Them,
Now you become, you see like what happened between the former president and Joe before the 2017 elections. Arresting here, preventing you from attending his functions. It proved, there's some sympathy that comes with that and actually shows some macho-ness, which is sad with the electorate. So these young men would want a name for themselves. When you say that they can't wear those fatigues, I can assure you, on Friday when they go to Machakos, they'll be dressed the same way, waiting to see if at all they'll be arrested. This is more or less, like I told you the other day, they're inviting those who are in government into a contest. The contests might be different. So they'll throw so many baits into the water. Whatever you grab is whatever they run with. Now they have come up with this. And you see, when people see the beret is symbolic with the revolution. When you look at people who wear it, people like Bobby Wine, when you look at Malema, and across the world. All right? So these young men, they know what they want. They're saying it's their time. They should come to sit on the table, and they're supporting Raila Odinga. And Raila Odinga, he knows that they want to make a name for themselves. He himself will also use them to achieve certain goals and means. So that the idea is to have a win-win situation. Now, how the government handles that depends entirely on the future for these young men and women. Because you can't be a student leader forever. You have to leave or exit. And that is how you see most left and joined active politics. And I can tell you for free, that is what most of these young men want. And that is why today they are trending on Twitter. If you go right now, they are trending. That is obviously, you know how you trend. You sponsor your trend, right? So now we are waiting to see what happens when it comes to Machakos. If the most ideal way of doing things, you will see that they will have different MDT chapters. Nairobi chapter. That is how this thing is going to come up and crop up and be something that, they can actually come and tell Raila, now we have this. Because, police is all about numbers. So what are you bringing to me? Now, if you, for example, arrest these students, one thing is for sure will happen. Since most of them come from different universities as student leaders.
Will be on the streets.
So comrades will be on the streets. And that is another avenue that will now lead the government to actually start, when you start fighting students, it doesn't make sense because now you'll bring that tension that they want. That is what they actually want. Because without that, these consultative meetings they're having as Azimio doesn't really bother the government. But once they engage into a proper contest, now they enjoy it. It's like the joke that used to happen back in 2017 when the GSU officers would go to Kondele, look at the people and just drive away. They'd say, boss, umekuja na tear gas, that is what we want. Because hii maandamano bila hiyo tear gas does not make sense.
Makes sense.
All right? So it has to be a contest.
And you know, many have said that without riots, then the Azimio demos or these kamkunjis might have nothing at all or any significance. And we're going to get to that briefly. But before then, I'll ask your view on the coming in of this youth. He speaks of, you know, the grapevine that Babu could be the patron. Babu, a friend of Bobby, you know. Bobby, a friend of Chamisa of Zimbabwe. Chamisa, a friend of maybe Malema of South Africa. And the list continues. These people have come out, you know, they have been celebrated. These young men have been looked at as those ones that are bound to liberate their countries in future. But equally, nothing much has come out of, you know, this kind of route that they've been taking. We have not seen a Malema presidency. Bobby Wine, we all know what happened with that. And of course, we have seen what happened in Zimbabwe with the likes of Chamisa. And sometimes we ask ourselves, are we having youth that are ripe enough, mature enough to understand the game of politics?
Well, I think first of all, you're mentioning a generation that is trying to take its path, political path. And Baba Owino cannot do anything without the approval of Baba. So everything that is happening is change of strategy than going to the streets when the economy is bad. Let's have pressure on the government.
Okay.
Now, I will respond to what my senior also responded to. The Interior Cabinet Secretary is a professor of law. When you're a professor of law, you do not threaten people. The country does not belong to him. He's a senior paid servant who is supposed to serve Kenyans with humility. And as a very philosophical guy, I follow him. I was listening to how he was responding to the banditry in Suguta. Remember, I went with Suguta with one of your own when he was reporting the scars of Suguta. I was, you know, commissioned to go to take the media by an organization. So we went from Baringo County up to that Lomelo village. I was in that Lomelo village. Some of those villages have no schools or chiefs up to today. They have no roads, they have no water. So part of the problem of that part was the creation of the government by neglecting them. If you go to Kapedo, Kapedo has a very beautiful scenery. If the government invested in tourism, local tourism, it has very hot water, it has very nice scenery, a lot of things will have happened. So development was concentrating on some regions. Now, the issue of Raila rebranding and how the government will respond. First of all, Kenyans have the right under the new constitution to assemble, to picket, to talk, to consult, to demonstrate, as long as they are not infringing the right of others. So far, everything Raila did is non-violent. We have not seen what was happening under Jubilee when he was before the handshake, looting and killings and people were dying. Up to today, I don't think anyone died among the Jacaranda meetings. So I think the government of Kenya must concentrate on the pledges it had with Kenyans. Raila has the right to picket. He can do it every day. It's none of the business of the government, as long as they are peaceful. Okay? If they want to go to Machakos and create chapters, they can create chapters in the 47 counties. So we have left the era of Moi and Senior Kenyatta where things were done in the whims of the president. There is nothing they can do. Today, a president cannot do anything outside the legal mechanisms. You remember what happened to BBI. I mean, Uhuru was a very powerful president, son of a president, son of a vice president, and BBI was thrown out. It is not the courts that did, it's Kenyans that enacted that law, that this is how we want the country to go. I will want, and those young men, I mean, they are channeling their path, their political path. Politics or being interested in the same is not something your mother will tell you that go by. It's a calling from inside. Do you have the guts? Are you still in that pressure? I told you I contested 2 times as a member of parliament. I was defeated. Can you come back, take a shower, pick up yourselves and start life again? So politics is not meant for people who are faint-hearted. I was arrested in 2017 in a police station. I took a bond, I went to court, I defended myself. The moment you start arresting university students or Raila supporters, Other Kenyans who are neutral about how Kenya should be run will say this is a raw government. And that's not good for Kenya Kwanza right now. They are barely 6-7 months in office. They should concentrate on one. In the next 2 harvests, how is Ugali going to be 80 or 70? How are we going to get milk? How is Northeastern going to produce meat to be transported to Nairobi for processing? Those are the things that should worry them. Not Raila going to... Raila has
but it's a prerogative of the Ministry of Interior and the Minister to address some of these questions of insecurity. And you also do not expect for them to just sit pretty and overlook the fact that we have seen demos that appeared to be peaceful, and before we knew it, lives were lost. So what is wrong in Kindiki just reminding them that it's fine?
He doesn't need to. He does it. There are other crimes that are happening in Nairobi. You have what's happening in Mombasa today.
Yes.
There are gangs coming up and killing people. So when they break the law, when and if they break the law, the law will be followed. If someone hits someone, he will be arrested. That is assault. The lawyer is here. If you rob somebody, that's robbery with violence. You'll be arrested. We know what the law says. It is, you know, I am against Kindiki as the cabinet secretary for Interior. Is not law unto himself. No. There is a process for people who break the law, and we must follow them. That's why the people who killed Willie, the human rights lawyer in 2019, one is sentenced to death, another one 30 years, another... Did we torture them?
And someone was asking me about this now that you brought it up. Yesterday, we're just trying to jog our minds. A sentence to death, a sentence to life imprisonment. This that Kibaki burnt at some point was sentenced to death, still there, or it was a law that was short term?
It's still very much there. It's just that it's not desirable for some, but it's still there. It has never been, we've never...
lifted it.
Yes, it's still there.
So what does that mean?
What's the difference between death and you staying in jail for 30 years?
It's as good as
death. It's as good as death, because what is the essence of arresting someone? Is to deny them the freedom to do whatever you are doing. That's why the three of us have come here this morning. If you are in jail, you can't do nothing. You will not be allowed access to TV. You cannot even access your wife. Or maybe if you behave well,
nowadays they try at least.
No, there is. If you behave well.
Yes.
So if you are killing people even inside the jail, you'll be locked somewhere in a black cell. So the essence, like in Holland, there is no prisoners. They have taken care of what will have brought people to be prisoners. Breaking the law, people are hungry, crime rate, people are given food or food voucher and these things. So we should look at even the way crime is handled in Kenya, making sure this is a country where majority are poor. 4 people are richer than 22 million Kenyans. So how do you expect, whether you have a razor wire, people will still break into your house and take the TV and then sell it at a cheaper price.
And we're going to come to that, especially on this question of tax, as to whether then it is because of maybe 3 families or 2 people or 3 people that Kenya is where it is. And if these people are, hit hard, then perhaps there's going to be a shift. But before that, to answer this question, that is the biggest question as pertaining to the formation of the MDD. Is Raila creating an exit window out of Azimio? ODM is saying no, but don't you think it will send chills into the spines of those ones that sit in Azimio, especially when you see the Kionis of today hitting sufurias and reminding us that yes, tuko na njaa.
Just also to help you understand what the lawyer was saying. In Kenya, death sentence is often commuted to life. So which means that we don't have the actual hanging of people.
Yes.
But the sentence is there, of course, on paper. But then what happens is later commuted to life, which sometimes the president can pardon. Or, of course, clemency, a law that gives the president power to pardon people. Coming to your question, I think, and I'm not reading too much on what the papers are writing. Raila Odinga is here to stay. I think, in fact, when he said he doesn't want handshake, he really wants to play politics, and in a good way. The only question we should be asking ourselves, will he outsmart Ruto this time? And already we are seeing this particular formation, and I repeat again, is that he has gone to the drawing board. and he has seen what was lacking in his both campaign strategy and his political strategy. I think when the newspaper says that ODM is doomed or it is the end of Azimio, I think they're reading quite a lot into it. I think this is also energizing and making Azimio even more stronger. And I think the government needs to really look at and be very serious about what happens in the coming months, that the young people now are coming out now to demand their, not only their platform on the political arena, but also to hold government accountable. You mentioned Malema. I think it's not necessarily the quest to be presidents or leaders, but their voice must be heard. I think when they, you see, there's this phrase in Kenya that your youth are the leaders for the future. I think now they are realizing that leaders are the leaders now. And if you see also the number of young people who have come into assembly, see the Mumias East, I think, MP, Salasia. These are literally young people. Some of them are even sitting in serious committees in parliament. People are sitting in defense committees. These are young people. So at the end of the day is that don't think that they really need to be in the legislative assembly or to be near power for them to assert their quest. So I think what is happening is that it's also a shock, and it's taken the government by surprise that the reorganization they are now witnessing in Azimio. So who do you want to target here? Is it the young people or Raila?
Well, interesting.
So at the end of the day, it will be difficult for them to know who is their enemy.
Nordin, unless you make it in 1 minute.
You know, Linda, they usually say that Raila Odinga in crisis is like a fish in water.
Swims.
He swims in crisis. When he's comfortable, he's less volatile. You know, but now clearly, as Wafula says, he sat down and he realized what was missing in my campaign, and he has realized. You see, during the campaign season, he was labeled a puppet, and the president was labeled a savior of the masses. And normally, Raila is usually seen as a savior of the masses. So that's why I'm telling you, he's trying to rebrand and take that back from the president.
But he had the youth caucus, he had the young Turks over Azimio.
That's why you see the difference between the caucus, the young Turks, and this so-called MDD that you're seeing. The MDD, you see, these ones are more or less like the fire in your ammunition. You know, you used to say Vijana fire. So they're like the cartridge in that bullet, which was missing, all right? Because he's trying to look for people where, for example, I believe he wants to make Azimio strong. So he's trying to see a scenario where when Azimio speaks, everyone in the country might feel, you know what, they've spoken for me as well. So how do you put that on board? And then also, you're trying to see how you can send different emissaries to different parts of the country when need be. And you see these young leaders want to prove a point that, oh, we can also help in leadership of this country. So you put them there. And that is why I'm telling you, there'll be a birth of many leaders from this. Because you know, in as much as we say there's no mentorship in our political scene, there are those who have passed through Raila's hands, many of Kenyans, and who have become leaders. And that's why I'm saying most of these young people have desires or ambitions, and they see a footpath, or rather they see a way or a shortcut through to get wherever they want to go. They will use it because they are trying to prove a point that we also can actually have a say in how the country should be run, and because they feel that we represent a certain constituency, which is the youth, who might listen to us. There might be one or two people, but that is what you need at the end of the day. You need a following.
Okay, great. Let's take a short break and then come back, expound more on that, and especially in this conversation of tax.
Je, maumivu ya kichwa na kukosesha amani? Kaluma Strong hutuliza maumivu ya kichwa, maumivu ya mwili na hata huondoa joto jingi mwilini. Kaluma Strong ina aspirin kama kiungo. Maumivu yakizidi, muone daktari.
Are you looking for a distinguished institution of academic and professional excellence to kickstart your career? Then join KIPS Technical College, a top-neck, CASNEB and NEET examination center in Kenya that is fully accredited by TVET Authority with over 90% national exam pass rate. We offer high-quality, hands-on training in engineering, hospitality, tourism, journalism, ICT, business, accounting, hairdressing and beauty, health sciences, community development and foreign language, and have placed over 26,000 graduates since 1994. Our state-of-the-art equipment, well-equipped workshops, indoor and outdoor sports facilities make us the preferred choice.
During my training, I was able to become Miss KIPS, which has helped me to achieve my goals in community development.
Admissions for January 2023 intake is ongoing. For more information, call 0720-813-113 or visit any of our 6 campuses located within Nairobi. KIPS Technical College, your sure path to success.
We value your feedback. If you would like to send questions, comments, or suggestions for your favorite TV47 shows, call us on telephone number 0740-047-047 or email us on info@tv47.co.ke. You can also write to us on PO Box 599 00606, Sarit Center, Nairobi. Or you can reach us on any of our social media at TV47 Kenya across all platforms. You can also drop your complaint or feedback at our office located on number 10, Ojiji Close off Ojiji Road, Parklands, Nairobi.
Right, and yes, Karibu Sana once again. We are on this phase of just taking a look at what is happening in the country. We have 100 days of, them being in office, the cabinet secretaries, now that we're talking about Kindiki and a couple of others. They have promised to address the question of insecurity, make sure that then we advance the health sector. They have talked about 100% transition to digital world and so much more. We'll be looking at that shortly. But before then, let's talk about this tax conversation, because in as much as we do not want, just before then, let's listen into, this kelele ya Jeremiah Kioni kidogo tu. And I don't know whether it's kelele or is indeed something that needs to be listened to, and then we can react to the same. Have that, Mr. Director? Gentlemen, that is talk enough, eh?
Yeah.
That we really need to be, not to be told so much. But what makes us all smile, perhaps, is the face of Jeremiah Kioni. One of the biggest questions is whether then Jubilee Party is still in existence. But away from it, a clear indication that there's a problem, the high cost of living?
Definitely. I mean, the government should not shy from this. I think the economy is on its knees. And then the ripple effect is that food prices and also rocketing unemployment rates. So I think at the end of the day is that things are bad. I think what Kioni is doing is very popular in Europe, in many democracies. It's some people even decide just to hoot. 1 hour or 5 minutes of hooting. So every car stops and people hoot. This thing is so common. So I think the economy is bad, and I think the approach the government is taking is very absurd. It's very embarrassing to see that there's a lot of politicization. The government thinks that it can make money. The government is broke again. That is a fact. They are very broke. They don't have money. They think that they can get money from taxes. But that's not true. I think the money that the government needs is from what it has lost through corruption, as opposed through people not paying tax. And we are really not facing the bull by its own, because most of the people in the UDA government are corrupt. They have been named in corruption cases. And that's why they're not talking about corruption. They are busy talking about taxes and thinking that when we catch the people who don't pay taxes, we will make money. Remember the president saying, I remember former President Uhuru Kenyatta saying that they lose almost, I think, to the tune of $1 billion.
2 billion
per day.
per day.
Yeah.
Per day. That's where I think the government should focus and find who are these people tainted in corruption. I'll just tell you one thing. For example, it's very sad for us to speak about it. Our president, Ruto, Weston Hotel, it's a fact that he bags a lot of money from government contracts. Amaco Insurance has the largest contracts from government. If you look at Martini Company, bags a lot of contracts. At least it leases 170 apartments to the police service. These are companies where the president is a director. What are we saying? We are saying that if we are not going to address these things and then face the actual elephant in the room, we will not be solving our problems. I think what is good, instead of us talking about taxes and targeting people, what Ichungu has done by going to write to the Treasury, he should be asking EACC, publish all the names of big people who have been investigated over corruption.
On the local dailies.
In the local dailies, for Kenyans to see and what is the allegations. Secondly,
those who have
been accused for corruption.
Accused.
Not those people who have been excused. Look at the number of people who have been let go.
And this has been published even before the election.
And I think that is important. The next thing that is very critical, I think we need, and to be with fair respect, including the president, to publish all the businesses he owns, plus how much he pays tax. Everybody, even Raila Odinga, can he write, instead of saying the big people, look, the president's company leases 170 houses to the Kenya police. How much tax does he pay? Amaco Insurance is the biggest insurance contractor in many government parastatals. How much tax does he pay? Weston Hotel, which has given a lot of contracts to government for conferences, how much tax does he pay? And many other businesses that Kenyans don't know. Can they actually publish and then declare the amount of tax that the president has been paying from 2018? Because that's what he has said, that he has requested the
list for.
So can that be backdated to 2018? Let's not, from the time they entered into the office with the former president, and they were actually romance. From the time 2013, I think, when they got into the office, can that be published? And even if they don't want to do that, can they publish from 2018 how many businesses that the president owns, including the vice president, and how much do they pay in tax? And also what Kalonzo owns, what Raila owns. Let us be fair to Kenyans, so that we know we depoliticize this issue. Tax is not the issue. Corruption is the issue.
All right, and even as you also weigh in on this matter, I eavesdropped. Is it to eavesdrop, or perhaps overheard last saying something about how interesting or how resilient Kenyans are, that amidst all these tough times, they still soldier on, will still survive. Are we really in bad times? Because we have seen revolutions that have been triggered by, countries being in...
My dear Linda, Kenyans are paying tax.
Yes.
Every receipt you get, including the water you buy.
Which they say, they project is going to be...
look at, if you eat in a restaurant, if you buy anything from the supermarket, if you buy from a gas station, we pay taxes. There is no way the government can tell us Kenyans are not paying taxes. The question is, who is not paying taxes? As my colleague has alluded to, the president is making everybody suspicious when he does not address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Theft of public resources. He has been mentioned in several scandals. His cabinet secretaries, half of them, I think they are 20-something, they are worth 15 billion. The cabinet secretary of the Hasla Kenya Kwanza government is worth 15 billion. How much of them? Musalia Mudavadi is worth 4 billion. How much tax does he pay? So the issue of, when you ask for equity, you must come with clean hands. I would also to remind the panel and the viewers, the former CJ, Mutunga, said we have a banditry economy where 30% is stolen at the budgetary. He's talking about 2 billion. 30% of 1 trillion is almost 300 billion, is it? It's stolen in treasury, presidency, judiciary, in parliament. These are the institutions we have entrusted with our resources and the management of our resources. Now, this country, as long as President William Ruto is not talking about corruption, everybody becomes suspicious of his dealing with government. Did he bring all these people who are alleged to be corrupt to be doing business on his behalf? It's going to be no. There is nothing secret in this country. You go to the corridors of power around parliament. If you have friends, you talk to your friends, members of parliament. You talk to people in the national intelligence. You talk to people in the director of criminal investigation. They will tell you everything. That this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. So there is nothing secret because, and when you're told something is free, someone paid for it. There is nothing free. God did not send things to this country until they are free. There is nothing free.
Right.
When TV47 takes the staff for free in Mombasa, it is someone somewhere who paid for that money.
Yeah.
Their ticket, the hotel. So there's nothing free.
All right.
The president claims to be a Christian. And I told you, I'm a Muslim, yes, but I read the Bible. If you look at the book of Matthew, or the book of Psalm, or all books, especially the Old Testament, Christianity, especially the Catholics and the Muslims, have a lot in common. Now, when you claim to be a very overzealous, Christian, then you must act like Maraga. Tell us, I swear by the Bible, that I am not corrupt and I have never stolen. Can Ruto say that today? He has a pulpit today in State House. So the issue of pretending to be one and being one, I repeat the journalistic dictum, do not tell, show. Kibaki showed us. President Ruto needs to show us that ugali is going to 70, milk is going to 50. I am going to the market, Abdullahi. I was buying milk for my son, who is barely 3 months old. That he takes that debit like for 3-4 days. It's 2,100. That non-milk. You see, 2,100 for a baby who's 3 months old in his own country. I was supposed to pay like 500. Is it?
Perhaps it's even more.
Or even less. So what we need is the president. I don't know what's happening to David Ndii. What kind of advice he's giving. I saw something about the tax. He tweeted. What we need is practical solutions to our problems. Now, why the government must panic about the issue of Raila coming with the youth? This guy was running on a hustler narrative. We have youth here now agitating for what he was talking about. So tax issue, or rather corruption issue, money is lost in government agencies. Ordinary Kenyans, there is a difference between corruption and public theft.
Yeah.
Linda, public theft means this cup costs, corruption means this cup costs 50 shillings. The supplier and the officers agree that we are going to make it 70. So the 20 bob belongs to the officers, and that's corruption. When you steal money that is supposed to be supplied medicine, hospital beds, food for the poor, and all that, that is public theft.
Wow.
Unless and when we handle public theft, Ruto will tell us a lot of other things, and then we look at him like, seriously? No.
And now that you mentioned something to do with Christianity, let me read this message from one of the people who's watching, Kerry King, and says, Zakayo was told to return all proceeds before entering the kingdom of God. I don't know whether you people have read something to do with Zakayo.
Yes.
Ask the panel whether they know where Zakayo was buried. At least we know the tomb of Jesus, but the tax thing of Kenya is in a total shamble. Good morning, Linda, and good show. Yes. Nordin.
You know, we need to ask ourselves, what is the reason for all this tax noise? You know, in politics, don't just look at what you're being told. What is happening underneath whatever you're being told? Before this issue on tax, people are talking about the high cost of electricity, high cost of food, high cost of living, high cost of water, things like education. So this seemed to be more or less like a distraction from what you are agitating for. Let us tell you the reason as to why life is that tough. Let us show you these two families are the problem. You get? So it was more or less political, or it is political. And that is why I say it is insanity, because we are doing the same things the same way, expect different results. I thought since they were in that government together, they should have learned what not to do in this new government that now they have formed. Because now you have promises that you assured Kenyans. You have a plan, as they call it, the manifesto. How do you achieve that plan? Because you remember, they kept saying, when we take office, mara nikika bibilia chini, now 100 days, then give us 6 months, then give us 1 year, give us 2 years. Now we didn't get any money. You get? So there are so many tales. What is the true position? You get? Yes, the government doesn't have money. It's true. But how do you realize your promises? That is number one. Number two, the issue about now, you know, when you say you're going to check between 2018 and 2022, so you're talking about the handshake period, as they call it. So whatever happened before that, you don't want to know. Okay. Then that brings the question. So the question is, are you really genuine in whatever you're trying to do? Because clearly when you say you want records for companies or firms close to the former president and his allies, you're clearly saying, when you were in office, you sent KRA on us. Now it's time we do the same things. So when do we ever move on as a country? Because now it's more or less like you're on a revenge mission, or that you want to settle all scores. Okay, so how long do you want to settle these scores? Then when will you start working? Because when you listen to leaders in Kenya Kwanza, when they get a chance to speak, they always castigate the former president. He's not there. Remember, after 5 years, all Raila will need to do is speak your manifesto. Go for a rally and say, they promised X. Is it there? No. They promised Y. Is it there? No. So the question is, when will you ever work? Or when do you plan to work? Because all these promises, you're still giving new promises. That's why I'm saying there's so much noise and nobody's checking. People need to understand, as we speak right now, there is that public participation on privatization. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it, because now focus has been switched to, the former president and their family don't pay tax. If this public participation, as we put it in quotes, is finished, then they come up with a resolution on how they want now Parliament to amend the law. When will we say we ever did participation? So you look at the noise and ask yourself, what is this distraction for? What is happening that we don't know? There are new regulations when you look at things like water. They're in the Kenya Gazette on Friday. Most people don't even know about that. So what is the government policy? That is number one. Because at the end of the day, like you rightfully said, I remember when I went to law school, doing the equity law, the first thing we were told when we entered class that day was, he who comes for equity must come with clean hands. So you want equity, but your equity is kind of disguised in that you want to punish X and save yourselves. When we talk about publishing names and companies, that doesn't help. You see, the war on corruption can only be won when there's no favor. When you actually go after everybody that has stolen. Now, if we do that, sadly, we won't have a government.
I totally agree with you. But there's one of the things we are really putting emphasis on is that this tax war or politicizing tax is it's actually it is faulty. I mean, it is not there. It doesn't bring any. It's not something that Kenyans want to hear. Because Kenyans are paying tax. Mama Mboga pays 20 shillings to city council all the time. Every time you buy something from the shop, you pay your tax. We don't want to hear about tax. We want to hear about corruption. Because that's where the problem. If you look at, for example, I was mentioning Weston, where Ruto's daughter Charlene is a director. The president himself is a director in that company. And he has gotten a lot of contracts from government. We want to know, Kenyans want to know, our beloved president, this is the business you are doing with government. And you know, what happened to wealth declaration? I mean, I think there was something called lifestyle audit and wealth declaration. The problem is that our leaders they are not honest. The information they give is not true. So we need to audit our leaders properly and ensure that some of them even use shortcuts to evade tax. If, for example, you put your daughter a director of a company, like for example, this Matien Limited, where Charlene Ruto is the shareholder, and again she's a director, would you be saying she's paying tax for this company?
Right. So you want us to engage in a tit-for-tat affair?
No.
Or?
The thing is that we need to be very honest,
right,
and not go targeting people. We need to say that tax is an issue, yes, but don't say, well, if you're going through these big families, why are you not saying that Mama Mboga is not paying tax? And go also after Mama Mboga who is not paying tax, because you are making it an issue. But corruption, we lose a lot of money on corruption. We need to know people who are, like I said, let's know the businesses people are doing and how much they are paying for tax. And those who are involved in corruption, let us also the list of shame. Shame them. I mean, there's a time during Moi's time where a national bank published a list of shame. People who own the national bank and have not been able to pay. These things have been
But just
there.
where do we get with such? And I
can tell you, once we mention, then Kenyans will be knowing. It is good for Kenyans to know that Wafula doesn't pay taxes, but he owns companies. And then it is the same Wafula who is saying, go for another person's tax. So that we know. People might be talking because they are hiding under the cover of tax. But themselves, they are not paying tax.
And like what Nordin says, most of the people, or most of activities will always be there to stage manage their stage money. Some of them will actually come in to just, keep them busy while they are in. Something else is happening, and before you know it, it's bad. There's this viewer who's asking a couple of questions. Is MDD the hustler medicine of one-on-one touch that George Soros wanted in Kenya? And we all know George Soros and the questions of regime change and how much, they have successfully, funded activities that have seen nations go down. And they go ahead to ask, is it going to end up noisy and messy? Interesting. And he says also that perhaps we need a solution that looks like the Namibian way of collecting tax that can cure all this noise that we have today. Nordin, briefly.
As I was finishing, Linda, you see, the issue I have with the way things are being run, you're running a government, but there's also the issue of vengeance and revenge, which we really don't need as Kenyans. You have promises that you promised, you have to achieve them. And I know most people would say history is boring. We don't care about history.
You also will tell us as a lawyer that justice is equally very important.
Yes. So as I say, some would say, history. We don't care about history, as it was said during the campaign. But you have to understand that whatever trajectory you're trying to use, there are those who tried that. We have Chiloba who tried that. We have Sata who tried that. We have Trump who tried that. And we all know how they ended up. So at the end of the day, all these sideshows or beefs that you have between you and your predecessor, that doesn't involve us as Kenyans. Because now you are in office, for example, as a government, fulfill your promises to the people, all right? And if you can't fulfill all of them, be honest enough and say, like he says he's a Christian. Be honest enough and say, we promised so much, we can't do all this, but we can do this. Be honest about it. Because at the end of the day, I remember that the president said, that day, I think the next day, everyone that had repaid their hustler fund would have immediate, what do you call this? That score would go up, and they can borrow more than that.
They can borrow more than that, yes.
It would be good to know if that actually happened. Okay. But you see, statements are being made every other day, and nobody follows up. And that's why I'm saying there's so much political noise and so much happening, and that is why I would really want this parliament to come back. Because as they come back, a lot is on the table. And I am waiting to see, like I told you, I'm waiting to see whether they'll actually agree to the amendment by Treasury, where they amend the law, where Treasury can actually sell or actually privatize parastatals without seeking the approval of Parliament. If they actually agree to that, then we don't have a Parliament. And this country has gone to the dogs. So we are waiting to see how this will be resolved. And matters of taxes, everyone should pay their taxes. And I remember this government came into office and said that they want institutions to be firm and to be strong. Why don't you let KRA do its work? Why do we have to make sure that it's all about a political rally to talk about taxes?
Has KRA been doing it right anyway?
Well, I think they have not. If you speak to the people who work there, who have relationships.
Yeah.
But I think what this country lacks is lack of efficient and effective monetary discipline. We waste so much money on non-issues. Now, the president is finding himself in a very precarious situation. He is seated in a seat that is so much castigated when Uhuru was there. Now he's facing the same problem. Because playing politics and running government, the two curriculums are very different. So the semantics of politics and the mechanics of government are two different things. Now, as my colleague Wafula said, the government is broke. Even the one of Jubilee was broke because they took so much money before the election. And you know, hata kama ni sukari, ukianza tu kulamba itaisha. So these guys did not know this is money collected from Kenyans, and if they collect so much out of it and it's not used in the... Look at what's happening with the county government right now. It was supposed to be, I think, 480, it's 360 billion. What we need is the president to fulfill his promises during the campaigns. He wanted us to believe he is holier than thou. He is now in the seat. Stories hatutaki.
Yeah.
If he has kept people to work for him, we will know. Kenyans will know. That is, he is going to be, and I said on this show and other shows, that Ruto wants to be compared with Kibaki. Not Uhuru, not Kenyatta Senior or Moi. Now, for him to be compared with Kibaki, Kibaki was silent. He fired 2 of his men from central Kenya. The Murungarus and the, was it Waireria? What was the other name?
Waireria.
Yes, they were fired. Can we fire Murkomen and another one from Rift Valley because they misbehaved? Because when you do that, then you will progress and achieve what Kibaki achieved. Today, if you ask class 4 or class 5 kids, who was the best president? Because their father talks about Kibaki, because their mother talks about Kibaki, everybody will tell you, I wish Kibaki was younger so that we give him another 10 years. Why? You know, there are some things. Who told you that in America there is no illegal business? Who told you in the UK there is no illegal business? Part of the black market is how governments go. It in a way indirectly stabilizes the economy. What was the dollar then during Kibaki? 76, 78? Because I was working in Somalia then. The dollar was between 76 and 79. Today, we're doing at 120 something, 130 something. What now the government needs to do is first, as we said before, as long as the President Ruto, Dr. William Ruto, is not addressing the question of corruption, the question of excess wastage in government. Remember, 85% of the resources are with the national government. It's only 15, I don't know even when it's 15, that is devolved. So if you have 85% of 1 trillion and you are not managing it well, your cabinet, there was a story yesterday that one of the cabinet secretaries is already swimming in opulence already, 6 months into election, because they can access money. Unless and when he runs a very lean, disciplined, effective financial prudence, he will have issues. He will be coming up with these sideshows of taxes. If it's about taxes, Ruto is now a dynasty. Whether he likes it or not, he has joined
categorized in there.
He has joined the Kenyattas, the Mois, and the Odingas. He is now the Rutos. His daughters are dynasties.
Are these the sole problems that, or the sole, orchestrators of the problems that we have, as many would say, that if they used to pay tax, then maybe the country will be at a different place. If today they are pushed to pay tax, the country will be at a different place. Abbas, allow us to respond to that after this break. Okay. And I think I'll stick to Abdullahi at this rate. All right.
Sona moja imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli ili kupambana na maumivu kwa haraka. Sona moja ina aspirin kama kiungo. Sona moja, kitulizo kamili. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari. Are you looking for a college that will shape your future career? At Candy College of Beauty and Applied Sciences, we offer advanced courses with personalized attention to our students. Come and get your diploma or certificate in cosmetology, hairdressing and beauty therapy, diploma in community development and social work, or certification in catering and accommodation operation. We also offer diploma in nutrition and dietetics and many more. All of our graduates have secured employment in the job market, while others have gone into entrepreneurship. What are you waiting for? Join us today. For more information on how you can enroll, visit us at the London Beauty Building, 5th floor, Taveta Road, Nairobi, or call us on 0726 031 109 or 0784 515 606. Facebook, Candy College of Beauty and Applied Sciences, or on Instagram, Candy College of Sciences. Our January intake is ongoing. Candy College of Beauty and Applied Sciences is the cutting edge college. Usiyakubalie maumivu ya misuli kukatiza ratiba yako. Kaluma Pain Balm ni dawa ya kusugua iliyotengenezwa kutoka kwa miche maalum ili kutuliza maumivu ya misuli. Kaluma Pain Balm. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
All right, last laps of this segment, and yes, we're asking, is it really, that the troubles that bedevil Kenyans, as many would say, have hugely been orchestrated or brought about by, some families? You started by saying that we have 4 people who are richer than everybody,
yes.
Like the country.
22 million Kenyans.
22 million Kenyans. And then you ask yourself, this rhetoric has some sense in it?
First of all, I am happy that most Kenyans are awake right now. There is nothing the government does that people don't know now, even in the village. At least every family, there is someone with a phone, a smartphone. I did an interview with a local online news line from northern Kenya, and yesterday I met some leaders and then said, I watched your video and you're speaking some. So people are connected. This country needs a president who will look at the future of his own children and others. Because when hells break loose, they will be the biggest losers. Believe you me. Look at what happened to Gaddafi's son. People will lynch their children. They will not feel mercy for them. Look at what happened in Egypt. Look at what happened in Somalia today. There comes a time when a president, especially William Ruto today, he is leading a country that is more than 47 ethnic communities. He is leading in a country where 22 million Kenyans cannot afford 2 meals. Hungry people are very dangerous people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk of snatching phones. Why don't you ask why are people not snatching phones in other better cities? Nairobi is a very filthy city, not even dirty. Why don't you compare it with a small country like Rwanda or Burundi? I mean, it takes people who are thinkers to generate standards of life. Why is there people now in Karen or Runda who are snatching phones? Because those gates are locked and they have razor wires, they have security guards, they have dogs. But when they're in the streets, there is none. Their phones will be snatched if the window is not closed. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because you are in a razor wire in the house, it doesn't affect. Your child can be kidnapped. A lot of other things happen in the country. And that is because there is inequality. What we are talking about today, Linda, and we said in this show and other forums, the same thing Kenyatta Senior spoke about when the Bendera went up that night, 1963, when we got independence. It's the same thing. I think 1973, my father was 5 years old because he was born in 58. We're talking about the problems when my dad was 5 years old. That is a very, a country that is led by men who are not thinking. Men who think, they will think of generations to come and how this country, when you look at our democratic space, our education system, our government apparatus and how we operate with the new constitution, we will be compared in Africa with countries like South Africa, Ghana or Botswana. Because if you look at our economy, they say it's a combination of Tanzania, Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, almost 6 African countries. Our economy alone is bigger than 6 African countries. Yet Uganda, it's cheaper to live in Kampala than in Nairobi. Because the lifestyle we have created for ourselves is an elite set, and an election set where you auction tribal outfits with those in money and then you come to power. It doesn't mean that all Kikuyus are rich. It doesn't mean that all Kalejins are rich. It doesn't mean that Jaluo land is rich. No. There are people who are suffering more than mortality rate is higher in parts of Nyanza, and there are parts of Nyanza that are categorized as arid and semi-arid areas. So there is a lot of inequality. The president must sit down, talk to Professor Njugun, and tell him, look, even though most Kenyans disagree with him that when he was at Central Bank, we were performing the best, he was not now he's in the helm. Whatever he did before, we don't care. We want him to turn around this country. Okay?
Yeah.
Parliament, judiciary does its work. If you look judiciary right now, there are people out there perceiving that they're going into bed with executive. That might be not true. But now because of the relationship they're having with Ruto is a very cunning guy. He's giving them, baits. He's giving them money. He's giving them autonomy. He's giving them that. So people sometimes say you cannot bite the hand that feeds you. The institutions must know that they are working for Kenyans. The taxpayer is Kenyan. Ruto is just like any other president, the 5th, there will be the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 10th. We need to have a country that thinks discipline is important. Financial discipline, self-discipline. How much can you eat? Why do you want to steal so much? Why do you want to accumulate so much? I know some members of parliament from northern Kenya who have enriched themselves. They have like 6-10 apartments. They have buildings in Isli. They have buildings in Halingam and Kilimani. You sleep in one bed. Why are you led by greed and not ethics and values and ideals as a human being? Decency is not bought by money. It's bought by how you live as a person. So the issue of tax, as my colleagues have said, is an issue to us. We pay taxes. Ruto does not tell us that we don't. We pay taxes. The people who don't pay taxes are the people he belongs to. Very good fundamental questions asked by my colleague. How much does he pay? His daughter is the director of this and that. He has this company and that. How much was he paying from 2013? How much is Uhuru paying? How much is Raila paying? How much are the Wanjigis and the Wafulas and the Mohammeds of this world who are very rich? How much are they paying? Look at the people who are the richest in this country. They have all held political offices or they did business with government. Anyone who has invented Facebook or Twitter or penicillin? None.
None. Okay, interesting. Let's drop that conversation of tax. It's still on. We'll be following up to give you more updates. 100 years into the current cabinet, we have mentioned Kindiki Kithure here. We have talked about the CS for Treasury. We have talked about numerous other CSs. And it will interest you to note that, 100 days into it, the members of parliament themselves have talked about impeachment. There are some people who have talked about, a reshuffle. Is that a clear indication that these ladies and gentlemen are not doing justice to the manifesto, to the plans of the Kenya Kwanza government?
Linda, what I would say is that with all the good intention that the president had to, of course, establish a cabinet that would propel his manifesto, whatever they call as the plan, I think one of the critical areas was to look for competency in the kind of leaders he would want, or ministers or cabinet ministers who we would actually then depend on to be able to sell and carry this agenda. Unfortunately, and as you've seen, and many Kenyans have talked, this is a word in the street, this is a fact, that most of the people who came into the cabinet and who the president then has to rely on, some of them are questionable. They have questionable characters, they have very intelligent issue. I mean, also, they're actually, and I don't want to castigate or mention names here because it's also not fair. But I would really say that with due respect, is that they need to have gotten people who really understand the portfolios which they are being given to handle. I think, of course, we are told 100 days. Now we are going to almost a couple of months. Probably the president said we give them 1 year. Probably we can give them 2 years or even 3 years, or we can actually decide as Kenyans to give them 5 years so that they can learn on the job, and probably we start expecting results in the next term, because it is a fact that they are not delivering.
Is it?
They are not actually delivering. What is happening, and in fact, the other day I was surprised. Apart from knowing that we have a president and then we have a deputy president, the other thing I realized that we have is a parliament. It's difficult to know whether we have cabinet ministers, because I don't feel them. I don't feel anything. Look at the interior minister, for example.
Always making headlines. And
you know, what he has perfected so much is to wear some kind of military fatigue uniforms. And even I think he should be taken to Kiganjo, trained, and also be commissioned, because that is what I've seen. And I think when he's doing that and the level of insecurity is escalating, it was so sad yesterday I was watching
10 people died.
That some people were killed yesterday in an area where he's going today. So I think instead of telling us that he has formed this multi-agency rapid force to deal with the insecurity in that area, my colleague here mentioned that the real issue is about resources. If that is the issue, they should mitigate that and ensure that this is areas that are underdeveloped. Can we give them water so that there will be no conflict for looking for grazing land, or you know, those kind of resources need to be there. And then also they can organize security at the community levels and ensure that you have enough water. You have no reason to go to the Turkanas if you are from the Pokot. You have everything that you need in your area. And try to be able to mitigate that. You see this reactional approach that they are having, that when 2 people, 3 people have died, people have lost parents, mothers, fathers, that's when you now decide. I think that's where they're really fair. Education, look at the mess we are seeing in education. Look at what we are seeing now in telecommunication. Look at what we are seeing in the banking sector. Almost every sector has a problem. Whether it is a 2 year, 3 year, 5 years for them to learn, it is them to tell us.
Nordin, 100 days into it.
Linda, first and foremost, I remember when I was here last year, I told you, whether the president will achieve his plan or not depends entirely on the cabinet he appoints. I remember I said that. And the cabinet he appoints, we will know from there what to actually expect and what not to expect. And that is why we see when they came into office, before they actually had a sit-down, a cabinet sit-down, they were speaking from different ends. You'd see a cabinet secretary give out a direction that is not even a cabinet level direction. So there were a lot of issues. So I remember I actually told you the other day that the sad reality is that most of these people were. It was more or less like paying a political debt for those most of them who are there. The sad reality is that from the grapevine we hear that maybe their performance contracts 18 months, we don't know, 12 months. Whether that is true or not, we are going to see. Because if God grants us life, we will see whether there will be any reshuffle. That is why there is this talk about a reshuffle, which we really don't know. But the sad reality is that we have to look at how things have been handled, and there are issues. When you look at, for example, I really don't understand our craze about 100 days. Every leader has this 100 days, not just even the cabinet secretaries. I'm seeing governors give us 100 days, telling us what they've done in 100 days. You know, you don't need to tell us what you have done. We should feel it. To date, he just gave us an example of Kibaki. Why did we talk about Kibaki? Because we felt it. We just have to feel that and we know what you're doing. But there's this craze of always calling the media to tell us what you have done. Yesterday, when the CS for Interior was talking about 100 days, there was an attack as he was speaking, all right? And then you look at how we want to handle it. For example, a multi-agency is not the way to go around the banditry issue, as they rightfully said here. Those people feel like they are left out. It's like that is not part of Kenya. And that reminds me of, I remember MRC back in the day, because they felt they're not part of Kenya. There is no development in that area. There are no schools. There's no proper sanitation. There's no economic activity happening there. So you ask yourself, what happened to devolution, number one? And then number two, the devolution should work with the national government. Why can't, you see, if you want to change their lives, there's no way a young boy from the age of 8, 9, 10 who's using a firearm to 18, and then you come and threaten that person that you're going to come with GSU and you think they'll be afraid. You have to show them a different way of doing things as opposed to violence. Because all he knows is violence. So if you attack him, he'll attack, and he knows the terrain better. All right? So if, for example, you invest in education in that area, you invest in different economic activities, you'll be able to show them away from this cattle rustling, you can do A, B, C, D, which is totally different. I saw the Senator for Nandi say that he wants to amend the Terrorism Act and have banditry as a terrorist act. That doesn't help anything, because now those bandits will now become the Boko Haram of this country. If we have a penal code and we haven't been able to stop muggings in Nairobi, how do you think just because you amend an act, you'll be able to stop the banditry attacks? And for you to solve those attacks, you also have to look at the leaders, because some leaders are financing them. So unless you tackle them, which, as they say, there's one who's usually mentioned, saying that he's one of them. If you can't deal with someone like that now that he's closer to you, then you're clearly not going to do anything about the bandit attacks. It will happen today, you will go there and leave, and happens again. I remember the senator for, was it Marsabit, said that the interior minister talks a lot. He went, there was an attack, he left, another attack happened. You see, this government needs to learn to work in silence. You don't have to be on the news 24/7. Just work. Whatever you're doing, if at all it has any impact, it will bear fruits. But this issue of today, someone X coming up and saying my 100 days. Yesterday, the CS for lands was talking about 100 days. 100 days, and we're having a rise of land grabbing in Kenya. Our disaster is not working. As an advocate, we are struggling because our disaster is not working. We actually had a walk to the lands ministry. So there are a lot of issues, and I believe the best way is people to fast. I believe these trappings of power come with shock. You know, some, you just woke up one day, you have a chase car, a V8 or a VX that has a flag. You can't believe it. Okay. So for some, those trappings of power have confused them. So they need to settle down. If you listen to people, they sometimes say, cool down, Sima, relax, sit down, absorb it all in, and then now start working. Because if you get into that craze, you'll run amok out here.
And just a small rejoinder before he talks is that it's not necessary for ministers or cabinet secretaries to be giving press statements. You have officers competent in those areas. Officer in charge of the operation in Subuta, for example, can give a proper media briefing with all whatever people wants to hear. It's not actually the prerogative of a minister. Look at other countries, the US, or you will hardly see the cabinet secretary or talking about small issues like cattle rustling, that we were able to kill 2 bandits and recovered 20 heads of cattle. These are things that people should be able to delegate that. He sits in the office and be able to monitor and give direction on But all the time, if our CS is going to be on the ground in the operation, surely it is going to be destructive for people even who are working in that operation, because he's always there. And when he appears, what happens? Everything stops for him to be received. And of course, there's cameras and the media. So everything stops for him. So I think those are the kind of things where this excitement needs to be toned down a bit.
First of all, Kenya is not looking at what you call the sociology of the insecurity in the north. When the senator talks about he's going to add, I mean, there are no Somalis there. It's Marakwets, Pokots, Kalenjins. So who are you going to tell us that they're terrorists? You categorize cattle rustling as terrorism. They're just your brothers and sisters. Marakwets, Pokots, Nandis. These are the guys who are fighting along Baringo and that stretch. I've met them. So you tell them now, a Marakwet, a Pokot, a Turkana, a Nyangaton, a Dasanach, these are Kenyans in the north. So what are you telling us? You're not telling us anything. I tell you, I met a guy there are 2 guys who were leading both the Pokot and the Turkana banditry. And I met them. One is about 50 something, the other one is about 70. Now, Kindiki wears those regalia and then thinks those guys care about him. He's talking of drones. They will drop those drones like bats because they are sharpshooters. Those guys drop bottles of water and they hit the lid, not the bottle, the blue part opens with a gun because they have AK-47 and G3 and more sophisticated weapons. And they proudly carry those guns. And I think Kindiki comes from central Kenya. Pastoralists have what you call ego. You touch their cattle or animals, you touch their women, you touch their children, they will fight to death. I'm a pastoralist. I know how it works. The current government must sit down. Let's develop the roads because the people who are going to Turkana go through Kakamega because the roads are very bad. But there is a shortcut through, Lomelo and that Kapedo side. So it will have taken them a whole day. It's going to take them like 5 hours. Build a road. There is a school today in Pokot area where the chief is a Turkana and the rest is a Pokot. There is no school. 60 years after independence. And then you come with the nonsense of telling us we are going to have CCTV. That part of the world does not give a heck to CCTV. It's wild. The terrain is so thick and hilly and rough and stony that no person who grew up in central Kenya or Nyanza or Western who is a soldier can even manage. Because how you grow up plays part in how you handle things. So as my colleague has said, Kindiki is very busy talking too much. And I expected a lot from him. A PhD in law, meaning you have read a lot. Sit down, make policies. Okay? Go to Kapedo, sleep there. Talk to the locals. Go to Suguta Valley, sleep there. Talk to the people. Come back with notes.
A thesis.
Yes, come back with notes. A thesis. Go to, like now, if you look at the Baragoi side, up to this side of Maraland, it is very beautiful land. You want to tell the Pokots and the Turkanas, don't take your cattle and goats to green part of this country because the Samburus don't own the country. They are only living there. Like there are people working from everywhere. They come in Mandera. So you cannot tell Kenyans, don't go this side or don't go that side. No, this is all our country. That's why most Somalis have kettles and rather chemos in Voi and that coast region. Is that a Somali area? Somalis come from northern Kenya. But because this is our country, they have hired people, they have bought farms, unless and when Professor Kindiki realized that as long as there is no development in North Rift, from Baringo, Turkana, that part, Marakwet, up to this Samburu land, as long as the government is not going to take development, cattle rustling is business. Up to the Ugandan side, Karamajongs, the South Sudan, the Ethiopian side, the Kenyan side. It is a multi-million business when it comes to cattle rustling. But this other insecurity within the North Rift, from that side up to Samburu this side, as long as the government of this country will not take development, people will be dying. 20 years from now, we will come back. Because 2015, we were talking about the Pokots and the Marakwets. 2015. 7-8 years down the line. 15 years to come, we will talk about it because you have not built schools, you have not taken their water, you have not taken their... There are places that has no health facilities. Hospitals are not there. The basic social amenities, the basic public utilities, they are not there. He will not, those guys will not listen to this government.
So it's an excess in futility.
They will fight.
This is not.
When 40, 50 soldiers were killed in that part of the world, soldiers will keep dropping. We'll tell the Cabinet Secretary for Security, soldiers will keep dropping. Because those guys don't care about the death.
Clearly, the CS for Interior gets the heat this morning. A lot needs to be done, of course, courtesy of the executive. And the question of devolution for the president, for the Kenya Kwanza government to realize its manifesto. Gentlemen, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. Nordin Kagai, lawyer, the last speaker, Abdullahi Alas, governance and policy.